The history of Senegal goes back a long way, a good many centuries before colonization. From the 5th to the 15th century, the region was dominated by the powerful Ghanaian, Almoravid, Malian, and Songhai empires, which forged the social structure and ethnic diversity that even today characterizes the population of Senegal. Throughout the entire Middle Ages, salt, silver, gold, ivory, and other riches of Africa crossed the Sahara by caravan and poured into the royal coffers of France, England, and Portugal. The 15th century ushered in the age of the caravels. The Portuguese ships struck out to the south along the coast of Africa. They seized the gold mines and established trading settlements along the new route to India blazed by Vasco da Gama. The Portuguese, and soon after the French and English, used these trading posts for the slave trade, which supplied manpower to the plantations in America. In the middle of the 17th century, the French Company of the West Indies, prompted by the French Minister of Finance, Colbert, established a trading settlement in Saint Louis, which at the crossroads of the Atlantic sea routes and Saharan land routes occupied a strategic position. Yet it was not until the mid-19th century that the French began their push inland and established trading posts along the Senegal River. Then, for nearly a century, boats traveled up and down supplying the villages on the river. Those days are now gone, but the Bou El Mogdad carries on that tradition, and for the duration of a cruise, brings the legendary trade route back to life. Saint Louis de Senegal. The morning mist clings to the delicate silhouette of the Feder Bridge, as if to prolong the mystery that enrobes the city. The Bou El Mogdad is still a long ways off, in Podor, a few hundred kilometers upriver. That's where we'll be boarding the boat. But in the meantime, Saint Louis is waiting for us with open arms. At first glance, Saint Louis looks like all the other cities of Senegal. The streets are bustling with all sorts of vendors and tiny shops. Here, they never throw anything away, and everything is repaired, reused, recycled. This is a society where some manage to live by their wits, and others barely survive. All those who move from the interior, lured by the mirage of the big city. And yet, St. Louis has a singular history. Founded in the early 17th century on an island in the mouth of the Senegal River, the town served as a hub for the slave trade. At the beginning of the 19th century, the city had a second period of prosperity thanks to the thriving trade in gum arabic. After the abolition of slavery in the French colonies in 1848, Saint Louis made a decisive changeover to commerce. A number of warehouses were built on the docks where goods brought down the river from the interior were exchanged for manufactured goods shipped in by sea. Saint Louis grew. Saint Louis grew more beautiful, and in 1895 became the capital of French West Africa.
The population
of Saint Louis, colonial Saint Louis in any case, was made up of whites, blacks, and mulattoes. Now it's important to mention that there was one simple reason for this mix. During the period of slavery, there were some slaves, the women slaves especially, that became lovers of their slave masters.
One can read the history of Saint Louis through its unique architectural heritage, but it's also evident in the proud bearing of its inhabitants, certain of who are descendants of the Signal. Our guide talks about this group with obvious relish.
The Signal women were very beautiful, but their beauty was bewitching, intoxicating, like an angel or a fairy. In the evening, when the sun was low and the colors so rich and warm, they would come out onto their balconies with their hair done up in a cone and a silk or madras dress imported from the East Indies with a sort of veil clinging to their hips that would just let you catch a glimpse of their slippers, a stole draped casually over their left shoulder. They were radiant and stunning, with a slave on one side and her griot on the other. The griot would chant the praises of her ancestors, and the slave would work the fan to give her a bit of fresh air. And all that eventually left a sort of show-off culture in Saint Louis, a culture of ostentation, which meant that every time they'd go out, they'd have to be accompanied by as many slaves and griots as possible.
In 1902, the capital of French West Africa was transferred to Dakar, and that marked the beginning of Saint Louis' decline. Paradoxically, that exodus may have been a blessing in disguise. The old colonial buildings that were abandoned or not kept up have become run down, but on the whole, the island has kept its former aspect and charm. Even though Saint Louis' buildings were classified UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2000, it won't be possible to save them all. It's an enormous job. Nevertheless, Marie-Caroline has undertaken the task of bringing one house back to life. This commitment is also a return to her roots.
This house first belonged to the Devez family, and it was originally a warehouse. Now, what was being traded on the river? Gum arabic, ivory. They might also store money at times. So I'd like to revive all that in this house as well. Put it back to work, give it a function, based in trade, study, seminars, because this was originally a house of commerce. Like many of these houses, this one has 2 floors. The ground floor was where they carried on business. And on the floor above, you had the living quarters. So the ground floor with all these arches, we can see where the merchandise was stored. This was where the administration was. And then we go up the stairs and into the courtyard, and on the floor above, we see where the people lived. Each of these buildings was built around an inner courtyard. I realize that there are many people here with their own very moving stories, and that's very important. Mine is my mixed ancestry. The Senegalese side of my family, because I'm Senegalo-Norman. My Senegalese family is from Saint Louis. My grandparents and great-grandparents were born here. My grandfather left Saint Louis for the war in 1914 as part of the famous Tirailleurs Sénégalais. He went to Verdun and luckily came back. So Saint Louis means a lot to me. It's not just a show town, not a museum town. And that's another reason I'd like to see it restored by the people of Saint Louis and remain a very active town.
Et qu'elle reste une ville pleine d'activités.
Saint Louis, a child of the river and the sea. This is no secret for the flocks of pelicans on the lookout on the Barbary Spit, the long, slim tongue of sand that still separates the river from the Atlantic Ocean, but for how much longer, nobody knows. For a long time, the fishermen launched their craft from the beach to tackle the waves that bar their access to the open sea. Now they've chosen the river as home port, and when the fishing boats come in, the riverbanks are overflowing with people.
They don't beach the boats on the seaside anymore. And that's for a very simple reason. There's a very high, dangerous sandbar. So sometimes it was hard to land. The boats would get wrecked. That's why we decided to land on the riverside, because it's calmer and the boats don't get split open or damaged. They don't get smashed up. Fishing is Saint Louis' only real industry. When the fishing business is good, everything is good. If fishing's no good, things are bad all around. When fishing's good, that's the time to take a wife. That's when you get together for the family ceremonies, baptisms, and a lot of other occasions. Fishing is all we have left. There's no more farming, no more cattle raising. Those activities just don't work anymore. The only real economic activity left in Saint Louis is fishing.
Our last moments in Saint Louis. A last look at the boats as they head downriver and vanish into the smoke of the fires drying the fish. Tomorrow we'll be in Pot d'Or. The Bou El Mogdad is at dock. Despite its respectable age, it still cuts a fine figure. It doesn't ship cargo as it used to in the early days in 1950, but no matter. When it made its grand comeback as a tourist boat in 2005, all the river people gave it a rousing welcome. The Bou, as they call it here, is a friend, and even more, a member of the family. The Bou is docked in front of the old trading post that used to do a thriving business trading with Mauritania, Senegal, and French Sudan, now Mali.
When the French realized that the river was navigable up to Pot d'Or all year round, they started setting up trading posts. After the somber times of the slave trade, when they abolished slavery in 1848, the French government decided that they should change Senegal over to an agricultural colony to raise gum arabic, peanuts, cotton, indigo. All the African products, plus pelts and craftwork, and gum copal, which was used to make resin, feathers, decorations, rice. In exchange, France would send manufactured goods to Pot d'Or.
For a long time, all the businesses of the trading posts run by the French, Italian, and Lebanese traders enjoyed a valuable asset. All year long, the water level is sufficient to bring boats all the way to the docks of Pot d'Or. In spite of that, the trading posts have now been abandoned. Commerce hasn't vanished from Pot d'Or. It has simply shifted from the riverbanks to the streets of the town. And now the inhabitants of all the nearby villages come to the market in horse carts or bush taxi.
Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, asphalt has now overtaken the river. The river used to be the only route inland, the only route of conquest. Now, with the Dia-Iri Road, the trade naturally takes the quickest route. That's why the trading posts closed in 1960. If the trading posts had stayed open, the Bou would have kept on working. But the closing of the posts, plus the Dia-Iri highway, that really brought the town to its knees.
Many of the townsfolk can still remember the days before asphalt, before the paved road, when the Bou El Mogdad was Pot d'Or's only link with the rest of the country.
There were no cars. There was nothing at all. For the young people, it was rare to see the big ships like the Bou El. And at the end of every month, the boat would bring in food for the families here, sent by their people working down in Dakar or Saint Louis. So that was important for the families here, and they'd all run down to see the boo arrive, because that was quite a joyous event, a celebration, because it meant that there would be food for everyone. The mail would arrive, they'd celebrate weddings, etc. So that's why the boo means so much to people here. I remember there were songs people would sing each time the boo arrived or left. So if there was a wedding, the wedding party would always sing on the way down to the boo. I remember one song.
Ayo miyeuni gidelam buyel narondi warango soko alla jabi o jabi ma soko alla jabi o jabi ma wankam ka antan ko mintan.
So that song was really like a lover's farewell.
The crew is busy with the final maneuvers. It's still early in the morning, but the departure is fast approaching. This is when the children of Podor gather on the dock to bid goodbye to the voyagers. The boo casts off. Our Senegalese adventure is underway. After a few hours on the river, we arrive at a Toucouleur village. It's a regular stop for the boo's passengers. We drop anchor in the middle of the river and head for the village in a launch. It's fairly clear that the women and children were expecting us. Ansu, the guide on the Bou El Mogdad, respects the time-honored tradition and comes bearing gifts.
These are the photos that the previous groups took here in the village. The villagers love to get photos from the outside. I receive them at the post office in Saint Louis, and then I bring them up here and give them out.
broken down tractors, which were a donation of an NGO, are proof of the absurdity, or in any case the limits, of Western aid. So just how does the headman see the future of the village and its youth?
The village earned its livelihood from fishing and from farming as well. That's the life of our village. The river has always been the center of our activity, but there is the land as well. That's our livelihood. The young people of the village would like to travel. They'd like to have a different life. But for that, you have to have the means. And if they were to go away, who would take them in? If the young people who work out in the fields leave, God will find replacements for them.
The fatalism of the village chief is a reminder that Islam is Senegal's dominant religion, and that the tout couleurs and the Peul, a similar ethnic group, are rather Orthodox Muslims. In the warm glow of the evening light, we leave the tout couleurs village and get back on board. While we're en route to Dagana, our next port of call, we climb up to the wheelhouse to pay a visit to Baba Sarr, 76 years old. Baba is the living memory of the boat, and he's been navigating the river since he was a child, so he knows it like the back of his hand.
I know how to do everything on this boat. That's right, everything. I can pilot, do the little jobs on the deck, and even in the engine room. There's nothing I can't do on board. Really, I know how to do everything. This youngster who's at the wheel, he's been around 3 months. 3 months. He doesn't know any of that. He doesn't even know if we're shipping water. I didn't learn just how to pilot. First, I worked on board for 4 years, starting in 1952. I was cook for 4 years. Then I went off and learned how to pilot on another boat in Podor. In '65, February 7th, 1965, I got my captain's license and I came back here. Yeah, you could say that I really know how to do everything on a boat.
And as if to drive home his point, Baba steers straight towards the bank to beach the boat with his personal touch. Once the prow is stuck into the bank, all the crew has to do is tie the bow off to the trunks of these majestic mango trees, where the passengers can enjoy the cook's tubijen in the shade.
You know that tibujen is a typical Senegalese dish. We call it tibujen, which means fish with rice. Here you have manioc root, you have turnips, tamarind fruit, zucchini, there are limes, it's got okra. The fish is the capitaine, Nile perch. It's stuffed with a bit of hot pepper. It's not too spicy. Here you have the really hot stuff.
And what's that?
That's tamarind.
Ça en rouge, c'est des piments, c'est des piments. Et en vert là, c'est des citrons. Et bon appétit, hein?
Et comment on dit bon appétit en wolof?
Recette cam.
We heard that a group of Peul herdsmen have made camp less than a kilometer from where the Boo is moored. The Peul are nomads and live in flimsy huts made out of branches, which they can easily rebuild each time they move their herds.
We Peul are not made for life in the city. We're cattle raisers. We can't live in the big cities like Dagana. We can only live in the bush.
Even though they live in vast clearings out in the bush, the Peul never wander too far from the Senegal River.
The river is very important for us and for our animals. We drink its water. We bathe and wash our clothes in the river. That's why we left the arid region to come live close to the river.
The Peul have a very close relationship with their cattle. Slaughtering or selling them is out of the question. The herds are continually growing, and it's sometimes difficult to keep them fed. But for the Peul, a cow or a sheep is not only an economic asset, it has a spiritual value.
When an animal is born and you see it grow up, it's a bit like your own child. You know it very well. A goat, a cow, or a sheep that is born here, you can recognize it simply by its sound. Even when I'm in the hut, if a sheep bleats, I know which one it is.
We reluctantly leave the poetic simplicity of the Peul village and make our way back to the Bou El Mogdad, anchored in the middle of the river. In the morning, we arrive at Dagana. Like Podor, Dagana was once a thriving river port on the trade route. The docks with their abandoned warehouses are now visited only by the women who come to do their laundry. Do any of the inhabitants of Dagana still remember what these buildings along the river used to be? Whether on foot or by taxi, which means horse and cart, all the inhabitants of Dagana and its outskirts come to the market. The market is the focus of all the town's activities, all the interchanges. In a swirl of colorful boo-boos, they sell fish or buy some fruit or grapes. There's bargaining, laughter, arguments. It doesn't matter the tone. Palaver is a way of life here. Just a stone's throw away from this delightful chaos, the pupils are entering Dagana's elementary school. But before starting class, there are the chores. Get the school spick and span. Not all the children of Dagana are fortunate enough to attend this school where they can learn to read, write, count, and especially learn how to speak French. For the French language is the only way the country's various ethnic groups with all their different dialects can communicate.
Aujourd'hui, on va voir multiplier en nombre par 10, 100 ou 1000. Multiplié par 10, 100 ou 1000. Sidi dispose de 12 billets de 1000 francs. De quelle somme dispose-t-il? De quelle somme dispose-t-il? Ça, tout le monde est d'accord? Oui. Répète.
After arithmetic, they move on to geography.
Le fleuve Sénégal est long de 1750 km. Il prend sa source au Fouta-Djallon et se jette à Saint-Louis. Les différentes ethnies au Sénégal sont les Wolofs, les Toucouleurs, les Peuls, et les Manding, les Diola, les Halpulaar, les Maninké et les Christianis.
Les comptoirs. Au moment de la colonisation, les Européens, pour pénétrer en Afrique, avaient installé des centres de commerce au bord de la mer. Donc, dans ces installations-là maintenant, c'est ça qu'ils faisaient des échanges. Donc, ils faisaient le commerce. Donc, les comptoirs sont des centres de commerce.
Once again, the Bou El Mogdad gets underway. We leave the trading posts of Dagana and head for Richard Toll, our next port of call. Everyone is at their post on board. There are even certain crew members that have two jobs, like Bouba, the barman slash carpenter.
The boat belonged to us. It was like our home. It's all we knew. We would go out for months at a time. We'd leave Saint Louis in March and come home in June. We'd leave our families and all. All the kids have heard about the Bou El Bagdad from their great-grandfathers, their grandfathers, and their parents, who would all make the trip from Saint Louis to Matam back in those days. There was no road, nothing. The only means of transportation was this boat. A lot of the country's present managers, ministers, politicians, well, when they were students at the Lycée of Saint Louis, they would travel on this boat. For the vacations, they'd go upriver to Matam, Bakeles, etc.
Do you think that your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren will continue traveling on the Bou?
Oh, sure. And why not? When the boat arrived, I was already 4, maybe 5 years old back then. And now I'm 62 and still at it. This boat is really something special.
We're coming into Richard Toll. This town got its unusual name from Monsieur Richard, a botanist who founded a plantation with an irrigation system here in 1830. Then Toll was tacked on, which means garden in Wolof. The gardens of Monsieur Richard are long gone. Now it's the sugar refinery that has become the powerhouse of the whole region. The refinery employs several thousand people, a good number of whom are seasonal workers. Even though irrigation has allowed the region to diversify its crops, the local economy still depends mainly on the refinery. It's the refinery that finances the town's school, among other projects. One can appreciate the industrial aesthetics with its forceful aura, but there's no denying that the symbols of power and wealth have changed greatly since the days of Baron Roger. When Baron Jacques Roger became governor of Senegal in 1822, he moved into this folie, as they call the mansions built by the aristocrats in the late 18th century. The Baron Roger's folly has now been abandoned. Mohamedine has moved in with his family and earns his living by telling the story of the mansion to the rare tourists that manage to make their way here.
It was the Barak of Wallo who gave this mansion to the military governor Schmaltz. Then Baron Roger took over. He was very well off, and he had a lot of material imported from France to bring European civilization here, to build this folly, this mansion here in Senegal.
Recently, the Folie Baron Roger received the visit of a group of UNESCO representatives. For Mohamedine, this could mean a steady job, unless, on the contrary, it means that he'll have to leave the premises.
They say they want to make it an art museum, but we're still waiting. They say it's going to be an African art museum. I have to watch over the house, otherwise there won't be anything left of it when they come back. It'd be all stolen. Look, there are no more armchairs. The shower's gone. They stole the doors and windows. You have to keep an eye out, tie things down, do the repairs to save what's left. I'm in fact the official guide of the folly.
We're back at the sugar refinery. These men may look like soldiers of fortune, but they're cane burners. Their job is to set fire to the plots of sugarcane in order to burn off the leaves and make the cutter's job easier. In just a few seconds, the field is ablaze. The heat becomes unbearable. It's a scene out of Dante's Inferno. While the cane burners head off to another plot, we get back on board the Bou El Mogdad. After a night sailing downriver, we come to the Juge National Bird Sanctuary. On board a little motorboat, we head out to explore this reserve that is home to one of the world's largest bird colonies. In this huge park, founded in 1971 in the delta of the Senegal River, a large variety of birds come to winter, side by side with the 20 or so species of mammals that are year-round residents. We leave the Juge Bird Sanctuary, and the Bou El Mogdad pursues its voyage on the Senegal River towards the Diama Dam, which keeps the salt water of the Atlantic from mixing with the fresh river water. Once we pass through the lock, the Bou El Mogdad comes into the final stretch of river that will take us to Saint Louis. With the outline of the Feder Bridge that appears in the distance, we know we're nearing Saint Louis. we slip past the banks of the island and approach the wharf where the Bou El Mogdad has docked for decades. Every week, a crowd of curiosity seekers gathers to greet the large white boat. Jean-Jacques has never missed the arrival of the Bou El Mogdad since 2005, when he put the boat back into service on the Senegal River.
She's a survivor. For the time being, she's the last of the riverboats. There will be others, I hope, but now she's the last boat afloat on the river. So we all have the same hope. We're hoping that the river will come back to life thanks to the Bou. And she's allowing us to relive the river's history by calling at the old trading posts. And I think it's a childhood dream for me. It's a dream for a lot of the river folks to once again see this boat going up and down the river. You fall in love with it. It's not easy to explain, to express, but it's not just a boat. It's not just a workhorse. It also has a soul. And even the passengers who are enjoying the cruise become attached to the boat as well. And I think that's what makes the magic of the boat, what makes the connection with river people. And through this boat, we try to recreate the bonds with the communities to give life to the places on its route.
And now we'll be leaving Senegal in the company of a native son of Saint Louis, Ablé Sissoko. He's the son of a griot, and no one can outdo him in singing the poetry of this city born of the river and the sea.
50 meters to the right, I have the ocean. 60 meters to the left, I have the river. And if I recall all the tunes that come from my heart, that I've composed, I composed them all here in Saint Louis, with my feet in the water and my kora on my knees, on a chair like this one. This is where I wrote all the songs that come from my heart. Speaking about Saint Louis, I can't find the words to talk about this town. It's the spirit, the calm, tranquil spirit.
Alfa